Are you ready for some football? I know we are. It's time for the 7th annual 3-Point Podcast Prep Pigskin Preview. That's a lot of P's, boys. Presented by the Memorial Healthcare Wellness Center and the Jacobs Insurance Agency, sponsors of the Prep Spotlight throughout the school year. Our starting lineup of partners also include on offense, ALS of Michigan, AZ Branding Solutions, and Detroit Jerky. On defense, Corey Shook and Associates Real Estate Services, Nelson House Funeral Homes, Rivals Tap House and Grill, and on special teams, Success Group Mortgage and Servicing, and the Shiawassee County Fair. You can tell I'm fired up. I'm getting into my broadcasting mode, even though I'm supposed to be out of here. I'll be doing a number of games, including I'll be at the first ball game as third mic on the Corunna Fowlerville game. But guys, hey, we made it through another summer, and we got our pigskin preview in front of us here, and we're just ready. It's football time, man.
It's officially football season when we're recording the Prep Pigskin Preview, because then from then on, it's high school football, it's Lions, it's Michigan football. I mean, it's full on football season. And we were talking about it before we started recording. 7th annual. I mean, unbelievable. You hear it all the time. Time flies. Man, the summer went quick, or man, this school year went so fast, all those kind of things. I can't believe we're on the 7th annual of this thing. I mean, it's just crazy because it seems like, not that long ago, we were doing the first one, the second one, and now we're on number 7, coming off of a historic run for our Corunna Cavaliers. I mean, it's football season, man. I don't know if we'll be able to top last year with the run Michigan, the Lions, Corunna had.
That's amazing.
No, we're excited regardless. I mean, it's football season.
But this time of year, this week especially, I mean, and when the slate is blank, everybody is undefeated. You can't beat the hope and the just excitement that's in the air right now. And you're exactly right. 7 years of all the stuff we've done on this podcast. I mean, we've talked about it. This is probably our favorite thing that we do. Maybe it's a niche audience. Maybe it's not. I think a lot of high school football fans are out there in the state of Michigan. So I think a lot of people appreciate it, but I sure have a good time putting it together and listeing to it after the fact too.
Yeah, well, I do too.
Yeah. Sorry, Ted, a little tease, kind of that what you said just kind of tipped me off. So I've been putting a little work in editing it already. And one of our guests coming up, Geoff Kimmerly, he's been on every year that we've done this. Geoff Kimmerly, he's from the MHSAA. He always gives us, some tidbits on maybe some new rules, schedule changes, stuff like that with the MHSAA. He threw out something, again, a little teaser for later in this podcast. High school football numbers in Michigan are higher than they've ever been. And he said I mean, this isn't like a surprise. They blow every other sport out of the water as far as, numbers in Michigan. So Michigan is a high school football state. We know that. And
there's a lot of good football being played here. I mean, I mentioned it, in my Detroit segment, which will be airing at some point later on this pod, but of all the cities in the entire U.S. last year, 2023, very start of the NFL season, more players came from the city of Detroit than any other city in the entire country.
Yeah, think about that.
That goes across the entire state. I mean, we know the type of football we have here, and we love watching it. So it's going to be an exciting, 14 weeks coming up.
100%. And by the way, with this special podcast, we have, I think, right around a dozen media experts telling us about their areas. You talked about Geoff Kimmerly of the MHSAA, and we'll also take a little chat with Corunna Cavalier head coach Steve Herrick. We never did get a chance to catch up with him after the state championship run last year, but we'll talk a little bit about that with Coach Herrick, and then also a preview of this year's Cavaliers.
Before I didn't know if you were about to toss over. We've got to ask. So you were supposed to be retired. I mean, Ted, this is like an ongoing storyline of the podcast. I know you've always kind of said you'll kind of stay involved if KC and the crew, if they need you to step in or something like that. But so what, you're just kind of filling in third mic, a couple Corunna games, or what's the deal?
Well, the way things have worked out, and again, it's just like the old line in The Godfather. Just when I thought I was out, they dragged me back in. Casey has a couple of conflicts this football season. Bart has a couple of conflicts. So I figure, what the heck? I'll join him on game one, kind of get my feet back into it, and be third mic because it is the Corunna Cavaliers. And so I'll be play-by-play on a couple of games. I'll be color commentator on a couple of games, and I don't really mind. It's okay. It's not the full-time commitment that I was trying to get away from. So maybe this will be more like a semi-retirement like I have in my regular job. We'll see.
There's no way come Thursday night when all these high school football games are kicking off, you would be kicking yourself if you were sitting at home for it. So we're glad that you're still not quite hanging it up. I mean, I just got to compliment you on your hat. It's like a Rob Lowe NFL hat, just says football on
Football,
it.
baby.
That type of enthusiasm just for the great sport of football is what this podcast encapsulates. So it's going to be a fun one.
Amen. Well, it's going to be a fun podcast. Everybody out there tuned in, stay right where you're at. It's going to be a ball, and we hope you enjoy it. We'll be right back with our first Prep Pigskin expert right after this.
Contributing to the 3 Point Podcast 7th Annual Pigskin Preview, this is Teddy Rydquist of the Argus Press newspaper. Just to remind people, we at the Argus Press cover 10 high schools here. I'll run through them in alphabetical order for you. It's Byron, Chesaning, Corunna, Durand, Langsburg, Morris, New Lothrop, Ovid Elsie, Owasso, and Perry. Those are the 10 we cover at the Argus Press, so I'll use those 10 high schools when going through my preview here. And I'll start with my 3 players to watch. I'll go in descending order from 3 to 1. At number 3, I have Joel Fisher, the senior running back from Morris. Morris and Fisher ran for over 1,400 yards and had a couple return touchdowns a year ago. He's an electric athlete. And with Morris looking to incorporate more passing in their offense this year, get Fisher in space, he can continue to rack up the scoring here in 2024. My number 2, another running back, and we're going to go to Chesaning. Braden Florian ran for over 2,000 yards and 20 touchdowns as a junior last year, as Chesaning won their first league title in 18 years. Florian, certainly another player to watch. Can he make a bid for back-to-back 2,000-yard seasons? And then number 1, I'm going with a quarterback, Trice Tokar from Ovid Elsie. Tokar was a second-team All-Area quarterback a year ago, and he is another one of the area's best athletes. A 3-time state champion in the pole vault and track and field. He set school records for Ovid Elsie in passing yards and touchdowns last fall, while also running for over 800 yards. And Ovid Elsie, remember, made a surprising run all the way to the state semifinals. They got Tokar and a lot of other pieces back. Trice Tokar, my number 1 player to watch this year. Then going to my 3 teams, once again, I'll go from 3 to 1. And number 3, I have a little bit of a surprise here. Going with the Owasso Trojans. Owasso's obviously had their struggles over the last 11 seasons, and they're going into the 3rd year of the Ron Tyner era, and they've started to show some progress. They went 1-8 in his first year, then 3-6 last year, and they have a lot of 2, 3, even 4-year starters back this year. Could Owasso make a bid at their first winning record since 2012? They're my number 3 team to watch this year. At number 2, I'm going with Ovid Elsie. I talked about him when I was talking about Trice Tokar. They made a run all the way to the MHSAA Division 6 state semifinals last year, and there's a lot back from that team. Not just Trice Tokar, they also return all 5 of their offensive linemen. That's a rarity in MHSAA football. And Ovid Elsie runs that strong 5-2 defense. They have 4 of their 5 starters on the defensive line back too. Ovid Elsie is going to compete in the MMAC, I think. And then my number 1 team, I'm going with Chesaning. They are the defending MMAC champions, won it for the first time in 18 years, the first time since 2005, a year ago. That battle is going to be fun to watch, and Chesaning, as the defending champions, they're my number 1 team. And then, to wrap it up with my 3 storylines, kind of just where I picked up there. My top storyline this year, the MMAC race. Chesaning won it last year. They went 6-0 in league play. But as always, New Lothrop and Ovid Elsie, and probably even Montrose will have something to say about it this year. That's always one of the better divisions in the area. And remember, Birch Run, a solid program, is getting added to the MMAC this year as well. So to watch that race will be a lot of fun. My number 2 storyline, the progression of the Owasso Trojans. Kind of what I was talking about. Taking a step forward. It's a program that, from 2013 through 2023 has not posted a winning record. The only time they made the playoffs in that span was the 2020 COVID season when everyone did. But I talked about all the talent Owasso has coming back. Liam Patrick, the quarterback. Hoyt Patrick, the tailback. Zach Rye, a standout linebacker. So Owasso, can they make a bid at their first winning record in their first playoff appearance in a dozen years? And then my number 3 storyline, the new look Corunna Cavaliers. Corunna's been terrific, probably the area's best program over the last 2 years, going 21-4 over that span. Of course, making it to the state title game last year. But how will the Cavaliers look without the Bauer twins, Herrick and Wyatt Bauer, and without Jaden Eddington? All 3 of them have graduated. We'll see how the Cavaliers look here in 2024. For the 3 Point Podcast 7th Annual Pigskin Preview in Owasso, I'm Teddy Rydquist from the Argus Press.
Hey, this is Yousef Nasser of ABC 12 covering the Flint area for my guys at the 3 Point Podcast. My 3 players to watch are quarterback Jackson Dosh of Davison, running back Jacoby Legatt of Goodrich, and quarterback Noah Shield of Fenton. Fenton is one of my 3 teams to keep an eye out for, as are Grand Blanc and Corunna. Well, let's talk about Corunna. My 3 storylines for this year are Corunna versus Goodrich in the Stars division of the Flint Metro League. Corunna was dominant in the matchup between these 2 schools last year. They lose 3 superstars. As you guys well know, Wyatt Bauer, Herrick Bauer, and Jaden Eddington all going to Ferris State, but they return 4 starters on the O-line. They'll look to help out first-year starting quarterback Caden Cowdrey. Goodrich also has a first-year starter. Tanner Mazik takes over for Easton Phipps as the starting QB. I went to their midnight practice, and I'll tell you what, this kid is fearless, athletic, and has some weapons to throw to. I mentioned Legatt. He plays running back, also some slot receiver. He was making some incredible catches. Chase Burnett was prolific. He tells me his goal is 2,000 yards rushing for this season. And Max Macklem, a 2-way superstar at wide receiver and cornerback. He's committed to Central Michigan. He makes a big play every single game I go to. October 4th at Goodrich between the Cavaliers and the Martians will be must-see TV. Number 2 storyline for me is Fenton. They've been dominant in the Stripes. They've won or grabbed a share of that division in every single year since the Metro League split up between Stars and Stripes. Now, they lose 2 superstar receivers from last year, Christian Kilpatrick and Jahan Bond, but I talked to their coaching staff, and they told me this year's group has a chance to be as good, if not better. Landon Becker leads that group, a big outside receiver who can go up and get the football. And their starting quarterback is a first-year guy, Noah Shield. His twin brother, Rory, is on the team. Those 2 make a dynamic duo. Shield is a guy that the Fenton coaching staff, including head coach Jeff Setsky, really likes his upside, thinks he has a chance to play at the next level. And finally, my 3rd storyline, Jackson Dosh's development at Davison. Head coach Jake Weingartz told me that Dosh is one of the best athletes on the team and is the hardest worker on the team. This is a team that's loaded with recruits. They were within 14 points of the Division I runner-ups in Belleville in that game over at Novi. Unfortunately, the Cardinals were unable to bring it home, but there's a reason this team is one of the favorites in Division I and certainly one of the best teams in our coverage area. They're loaded with recruits, guys like A.J. Hill, who's going to Ferris State, Braylon Naves going to Central Michigan. Ben Nichols is perhaps the best offensive lineman in his class, certainly, and perhaps in the state. This is a team that can win a title, and Dosh's development is going to be key in seeing how far they go. You can follow me at Yousef Nasser TV on Twitter/X. Checking in with my guys at the 3 Point Podcast, I'm Yousef Nasser.
I'm Jason Hutton, former sports director at Fox 17 in Grand Rapids. I have moved on now and I'm doing marketing at Power Strength Training Systems. We have 4 locations in the Grand Rapids area, soon to be a 5th, opening one in Holland, Michigan, coming up this fall. But this year I will be calling high school football game of the week on 107 The Moose in Muskegon. We have a great schedule of games. I'm really excited about it, but I'm also super excited about being on the 3 Point Podcast to preview West Michigan high school football. And as we jump right in with 3 teams to watch, we start with Rockford. Always have to start with the Rams, one of the best programs not only in West Michigan but in the state. Brent Cummings, now in his 5th season as head coach, has yet to lose a regular season game, 31-0 all-time in the regular season as Rockford's head coach, and the Rams have another really good team this fall. They'll once again field a roster of over 100 players like they did a year ago, and when you have great numbers, as Rockford always does, they generally field mostly seniors. And last year they played a lot of seniors, but they also returned more starters than normal. I have the Rams for 9 starters returning, including 4 on offense. When you look at senior tight end Blake Lindsley, made a big impact last year as a junior, received 9 college scholarship offers this spring, so he's big time on the radar of college coaches. He's 6'5", he can move, he's strong, athletic. big time. Then on the offensive line, they return 2 guys there as well, including Nolan Miller at right tackle and Dawson LaPlante at left guard. So to have those 3 guys coming back up front from a team that was undefeated in the regular season a year ago, and then Mikey DeKuyper returns at wide receiver as well. That's a pretty good start. They're going to bring in Braden Daniels to start at quarterback. He's a junior. Isaac Poot's a guy who's been on varsity since he was a sophomore. We expect him to see some time in the backfield. You also look at receivers that come back when you talk about Lucas Pitch, who played a lot there on the outside. He's all of 6'6", a big-time basketball prospect. He can really go up and get it. So I think Rockford's going to be really good on that side of the ball. I have him for 5 guys coming back on defense, including Cade Friesen, an outstanding outside linebacker who's really getting looks at the college level as well because he is fast. He plays physical, side to side. Love him. The other outside linebacker returns as well for Rockford in Andrew Hamilton. Then inside, you've got head coach Brent Cummings' son, Sam Cummings, who started last year as a sophomore. Then you look at the secondary, Poot, who I already mentioned, along with Luke Ahern, who started last year as a sophomore. Rockford's schedule is really tough. They're going to open with Cass Tech. Then week 2, they'll play defending Division II state champion Muskegon, and then they'll play what I think will be their toughest OK Red opponent in Granville. That's the first 3 weeks of the season. That's all at home at Carlson Munger Stadium. All right, next team to look at, defending state champion, the Muskegon Big Reds. Incredible run last year after starting 0-2 to winning 12 straight games and bringing home the state championship. Just 2 restarters coming back on offense, but they're really good when you talk about left tackle Jim Harris, right tackle Nakai Wynn. Harris going to Virginia, Wynn going to Rutgers. So to have 2 Power 4 tackles is a pretty good place to start, but they have to replace all of their skill guys. James Young comes into quarterback them. Young was a 3-year varsity starter at North Muskegon. So he'll be a 4-year varsity player. He's transferred in. We expect he'll get a lot of the snaps at center. And when you look at them on the defensive side of the ball, their inside linebackers are really good. When you talk about Derikio Speech and Adrian Rankin, I also expect Rankin to be the guy who carries the football for them as well. Muskegon, I expect, even though they have a lot to replace, I expect them to be really good again. Muskegon's schedule, well, they always load it up. They're going to open with Zeeland West at home, then they go to Rockford week 2. So as always, Muskegon going to find out where they're at very, very early on. All right, the third team to watch, I have Mona Shores. The Sailors have certainly turned themselves into a powerhouse over the last 12 years or so under the direction of head coach and alum Matt Koziak. But it starts and ends with quarterback Jonathan Pittman, 3-year varsity starter. Matt Koziak calls him the hardest worker he's ever coached. He's super talented, great kid. And then you bring me back to Marion Stewart, Ike Stewart, as he goes by, just a junior, but last year as a sophomore was the starter at running back. He's tough as well. And you look at, they're just loaded skill positions. Micah Carafel and Jager Johnson come back at the wideout position. So I think this Mona Shores team with 13 returning starters is going to be really, really tough to beat. And Mona Shore's schedule is tough as well. They're going to open at Grand Blanc, and then they go to River Rouge out of the gate. They don't even have a home game until week 4 when they open OK Conference Divisional play with their Sailor Salute game against Byron Center. I expect the Bulldogs to be really good as well. And then week 5, we'll have them in our 107 MUS Game of the Week when they play at Muskegon, in a game that always seems to determine a conference champion and also usually is a playoff preview. When we talk about 3 players to watch, I'm going to start with Granville junior running back Jaden Tank Terry. 3rd varsity season for Tank at running back in Granville's wing T formation. He keeps getting stronger and faster, and the game slows down now as he goes into his 3rd season of varsity play. This kid is outstanding. He's certainly heavily recruited by schools all over the Midwest and really the country. I think Granville's got a great team with 14 starters returning, but certainly they're going to be looking to get the football to number 28, Tank Terry, and I think they're a serious contender in that OK Red. Certainly try to challenge Rockford, who's won it 5 years in a row. All right, next player to watch, South Christian quarterback Carson Viss. 2 years ago as a sophomore, he's a starting wide receiver on the Division IV state championship team. Last year, he moves back to quarterback, and he leads the Sailors back to the state title game. In fact, they came up just 3 yards short of beating Harper Woods in what was one of the better state final games in recent memory as the Sailors finish as state runner-up, and he comes back. Now, the Sailors have a lot to replace, but it's nice to have a guy like Carson Viss at quarterback. Certainly could have been a college quarterback had he wanted to, but he's an outstanding basketball player. He's committed to Western Michigan to play basketball, but he's got one last hurrah here on the gridiron, leading the Sailors, and with number 5 with the football on every play, it gives South Christian the best chance to be successful. I know South Christian has an uphill battle in terms of playing inexperienced guys this year, but they always seem to figure it out, and certainly Carson Viss is going to lead the way for South Christian. Third player to watch for me, and he's a guy who I think is a little bit underrated over here on our side of the state, and that's Coopersville quarterback Bo Harris. Like Viss, a 3-year varsity starter. Like Viss, second year at quarterback, because 2 years ago as a sophomore for Coopersville, he started at safety. Last year made the transition to quarterback, and Coopersville won a playoff game, went to East Grand Rapids and won before coming up short against Zeeland West in the Division III playoffs. I think Coopersville's got a really good squad, and I think Bo Harris leads the way. He's incredibly athletic when you talk about speed, vertical jump. Also, just a really smart kid as well. Great leader, which you have to have, much like Carson Viss is. Great leader is Bo Harris, and I think Coopersville has a big season in store, and it's all going to start with their quarterback, number 1, Bo Harris. All right, as we jump into 3 storylines to watch in 2024, the first one has to be the realignment in the OK Conference, which also includes 7 schools splitting from the league and starting their own conference, the Rivers Cities Alliance. Allendale, Cedar Springs, Coopersville, Greenville, Kenowa Hills, Lowell, and Sparta now will make up the River Cities Alliance League. This is going to be very intriguing. Every 4 years, the OK Conference realigns, and these 7 schools were not happy with the direction they were going. They just went on their own, started their own league, the River Cities Alliance. It's going to be fascinating to follow this and see how it goes. I think Coopersville's the favorite here, as we just talked about Bo Harris and our players to watch. Certainly schools like Cedar Springs, Lowell. There's lots of tradition here in Allendale, lots of schools that have had success. It's going to be interesting to follow this league as it starts. But then you look at the rest of the OK Conference, it still is realigned. We have football-only divisions in the OK Conference now. So we're going to talk football only. In the red for football, it remains unchanged. So you've got 5-time defending champion Rockford, Granville, Hudsonville, West Ottawa, East Kentwood, Jenison, Grand Haven, and Caledonia, with the Fighting Scots being the only non-Division I school in the red. But after that, it changes up a little bit. So the green, we still have Muskegon, Mona Shores, and Reese Puffer. Byron Center comes in, Forest Hills Northern comes in, Grand Rapids Union stays. I think that's a loaded division in football when you talk about Muskegon, Mona Shores, Byron Center. Reese Puffer was really good last year, and Forest Hills Northern was a playoff team as well. So you're talking about 5 of the 6 being playoff teams a year ago. In the gold, a little different here. Defending state champion Forest Hills Central, along with Zeeland East, Zeeland West, Unity Christian, South Christian, and Wyoming. In the black, it's East Grand Rapids, Northview, Thornapple Kellogg, Ottawa Hills, Holland Christian, Grand Rapids Catholic Central. The white goes Spring Lake, Wayland, Hamilton, Forest Hills Eastern, Grand Rapids Christian, and West Catholic. And then the silver has Belding, Comstock Park, Hopkins, Godwin Heights, Kelloggsville as holdovers, and then Fruitport and Holland join the fray as well. So we're going to see some new matchups, games that we hadn't seen before that might determine conference championships. It's going to be really interesting, but I'm especially excited to see how this whole River Cities Alliance plays out in its first year. All right, second storyline to watch, new coaches. We have 8 new coaches in this area when you talk about Joel Bros taking over at Allendale, Scott McDougall at Greenville, Kendall Jackson at Ottawa Hills, Don Fellows at Kenowa Hills, Dave Fortino at Forest Hills Central, Curtis Andrews at Union, and Josh Lucas at Jenison. But the one I want to focus on is East Kentwood and Ty Spencer. Ty Spencer comes in after leading Detroit Martin Luther King to a ton of success the last several years. And East Kentwood's always been a school with lots of talent. And how will this marriage work? You bring in a championship coach, and how especially will it turn out in year 1? Well, one of the reasons I like him is because they got Cade Kaufman to play quarterback. He's a 2026 quarterback. He already has offers from Central and Western. Last year as a sophomore, he was Carson Viss's backup at South Christian. So now he comes over, new coaching staff, new system, new quarterback, but he's really good. And with the weapons around him, I'm excited to see how East Kentwood does and how they're going to fit into this OK Red race. Rockford, Granville, I think West Ottawa is going to be good this year. East Kentwood, Hudsonville always has talent. Jenison now has a state championship head coach in Josh Lucas. Grand Haven has a ton of guys back. Third storyline to watch, Grand Rapids Catholic Central and West Catholic. The rivals met in the regional final in Division 5 last year. It was a great game. CC scores late to win 30-28, and of course the Cougars go on to win the state championship. I would say both schools have a lot to replace as we enter 2024. But with great coaching staffs and incredible pedigree, I expect both teams to be really good again, and I think we could end up with another postseason matchup in Division 5. Rams Catholic Central's got to figure out who their quarterback's going to be. Connor Wolf was absolutely outstanding for them the last couple years. I think Braden Sweeney, the junior, who's been on varsity since he was a freshman playing defense, is probably the front runner there, but as many as 5 guys competing for that role. Brock Jones probably going to be the ball carrier, but you're trying to replace a guy like Kellen Russell Dixon, who's at Grand Valley now. It's going to be really tough. Jamie Williams going to have a big year for the Cougars at wide receiver if that offense is going to get to where they want to be. And for West Catholic, they lost a bunch of guys as well when you graduate the likes of Alec Wickstrom, Hope, Charlie DeBrune, Davenport, Ryer Snow, Grand Valley, and the list goes on. They don't have much back, but I think they have a lot of talent here. I really like David Brittenfeld, a guy who you probably wouldn't have considered a starter a year ago, but rotated in at linebacker, rotated in at running back. I think he's going to be outstanding for them on both sides of the ball. Then you go with junior Grady Augustine at quarterback, super talented. He's left-handed. I think if he wasn't behind a guy like Alex Wickstrom last year, he'd have probably been the guy. So a lot of question marks for West Catholic, but I think a lot of talent there. So I'm really interested to kind of keep an eye on these two schools, and will we get the matchup of Catholic Central and West Catholic in the postseason? Always fun to watch. Always fun to be on the 3 Point Podcast. I'm calling games this year on 107 The Moose in Muskegon. I love our schedule. We have Orchard View and Oak Ridge. Game 1 on Thursday night. Oak Ridge, of course, tradition-rich, 19 straight playoff appearances. They're always really good in the West Michigan Conference. Orchard View trying to rebuild a little bit. They have a new coach in Aaron James. He'd been Matt Koziak's offensive coordinator at Mona Shores. Orchard View is one of those schools like East Kentwood where they always have lots of talent, but can they get it all working in the same direction and everybody working together? And that's what Aaron James is tasked with, and I think there's a ton of excitement right now around the Cardinals program, and I just can't wait to get out there on Thursday night and call that game between Orchard View and Oak Ridge on 107 The Moose. And we'll have great games every week. We have Rockford and Muskegon in week 2. We're doing Spring Lake and Reese Puffer in week 3. We got Whitehall and Montague, big rivalry in week 4. So super excited to get back to my roots calling games. I used to call games in Ionia County back when I was in college around 2000. So thanks guys for having me on. I always appreciate it. And let's go. It's football season. Best time of year.
Hey everyone, this is Austin Szumowicz from WNEM TV5 Sports, and I'm here to give you the lowdown of everything to look out for this season for high school football in mid-Michigan. Now we'll start out with some teams that I happen to have my eye on going into this season. First up, I may be a little bit biased, it was my old high school, but the Davison Cardinals last year were a force to be reckoned with. Their semifinal game against Belleville was one of the top matches in the state of Michigan during the playoffs, but they ended up coming up on the short end of the stick in that one. They finished last year 12-1. They're returning a lot of great guys like A.J. Hill on the offensive side. They will have a brand new quarterback leading the helm with Jackson Dosh under center. He'll be taking over for Sawyer Glennie, who graduated this past year and set a school record for touchdowns in a season. That's a lot to live up to, but I think Jackson's up to the challenge, and this Davison team is still led by an incredible coach in Jake Weingarts that I think can lead them very, very well this season. In week 1, they'll be starting off against De La Salle. That was a crazy week 1 game that had to be split over 2 days because of weather, but Davison came back to win it last year. I'm expecting that one to be an absolute battle to see who comes out on top for that game, but I think Davison's still one of the top teams to fear in the SVL. Next up on the docket from the Flint Metro League is the Corunna Cavaliers. What a season last year was for the Cavs, going all the way to Ford Field for the first time in school history, where they ended up falling in the state title game, but an unbelievable performance from them. Coming off of that 13-1 season, a lot of expectations on this team. Now, of course, some of their best players, Jaden Eddington and the Bauer brothers, they committed to Ferris State to play college football, so not having them is big, but the team is still feeling very focused, very determined to live up to the expectations that they just set last season. I think Corunna is looking to continue to run over the Flint Metro League, and they're going to be a tough team for other people to stop. They're opening at home against Fowlerville to start the season, but definitely look out for that Week 6 matchup in October, where they'll be traveling to take on the Martians in Goodrich. Could be quite possibly one of the top games in mid-Michigan this season. Finally, over in Division 7, I would definitely look out for the Ithaca Yellow Jackets. This is a program that has such a legacy to them and have performed consistently well year upon year. Last year was no exception, where they were able to go 11-1. Their only loss came in the postseason, where they lost to the eventual state champions, the Ubly Bearcats. They'll have Jackson Kahn leading the way at quarterback, and Jordan Hesbrook has done a great job coaching the Yellow Jackets over the years. After their strong performance in Division 8, they're back in Division 7, and I think the change is not even going to phase these guys. I think they're still going to have an incredibly strong season, and the Yellow Jackets will be a team that schools will definitely have to look out for. Ithaca will open up their season on the road for Week 1 when they take on the St. Louis Sharks. Now let's talk about some individual players that I think will be exciting to watch this year in Mid-Michigan. First up, I have to talk about Garland Randolph, running back out of Midland Dow. This kid is a freight train, and last year he was only a sophomore and still performed exceptionally well for the Chargers. Last year, Randolph finished with 761 total yards and 11 touchdowns for Dow. And in that playoff win against their rivals, the Midland Chemics, Garland Randolph, battling injury and all, scored the 2 touchdowns the Dow Chargers needed to win that game, to win that playoff game, and move on to the district finals where they would eventually fall. But Garland Randolph, he's coming into his junior year. They're going to rely on him heavily, and his entire offensive line is back. And he told me specifically, those guys up front are his brothers. They block for him. He scores touchdowns for them. It's just as simple as that. Garland Randolph, watch out for him wearing the Midland Dow green and yellow, because he is going to be all over the field this year. Next up, we got to go over to Goodrich, and you could honestly choose between one of these two guys when it comes to guys to watch out for. Either Chase Burnett, the running back, or Max Macklem, the wide receiver. 2 offensive beasts who played incredibly well and both had great seasons, but just for this time, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to choose Chase Burnett. He was first team All-State last year with the Martians, over 1,900 rushing yards, 25 touchdowns. Incredible season from him. He's got a 3.8 GPA. I especially remember that great performance in their win over Lake Fenton, where he had 3 touchdowns and 150 plus yards. Right there, you've got 2 mid-Michigan running backs who are going to have really strong seasons, I feel, this year. Chase Burnett, his senior year with the Martians, looking to be a special one for Goodrich. Finally, we head over to Frankenmuth, where the Eagles have a force on the defensive line, a 3-year varsity starter, 3-star athlete, Derek Simmons, 6'3", 270 pounds, and he's got a 4.0 GPA. This kid has got smarts, but he's also got power in his game. Just a few months ago, he announced that he had officially committed to play for Michigan State. Last year with the Eagles, Simmons was first team All-State on the offensive line in his junior year, but he's also putting in that work on the defensive side of the ball as well. After making it to the state semifinals last year, the Eagles are looking to achieve even more, and I think Simmons is the exact same way. We're looking to see a great senior year from him before he heads off to play for the Spartans. The big man, Derek Simmons, be sure to look out for him when he takes the field on Friday nights. Finally, let's look at some interesting storylines going into this season of high school Mid-Michigan football. First up, I think you have to talk about the brand new look for the Saginaw United Phoenix. We've seen the United take the field before, but this is the first year not as a co-op team. This isn't Arthur Hill kids and Saginaw High kids playing together. This is Saginaw United kids playing as a team. Brand new head coach James King is building up a strong relationship with his players. The community especially is excited to see the United football team take the field. The Phoenix should be interesting to watch at the very least, and they'll be opening their season in Week 1 against the Freeland Falcons. Now, of course, this year you're going to have a lot of different teams with different conferences, different divisions. We just talked about Ithaca going back to Division 7. We've got Carmen Ainsworth moving up to Division 2 from Division 3. We've also got different conferences that teams are playing in, like Standish Sterling moving out of the TVC, and they're playing in the Jack Pine this year. Birch Run has moved over to the Mid-Michigan Activities Conference, and Millington has moved themselves over to the Big Thumb Conference. Those are just a few to say the least, so it'll be interesting to see how those teams perform in different divisions and different conferences. Finally, one last interesting storyline has to do with the Bad Axe Hatches. Now, they had 3 straight years where they made the playoffs, but last year the Hatchets went 3-6 to finish the season. But going into this year, Bad Axe confirmed with TV5 they decided to cancel their football team's 11-man schedule due to a lack of participation. This decision was actually made in an administrative meeting just a few weeks before the season was set to begin. Athletic Director Mike Bogan told TV5 they're hoping to play a modified 8-man junior varsity schedule. That way the student athletes can still compete on the football field. We'll hope to see the Hatchets at least still be able to play some football this season, but definitely something to look out for this year. But that's all I have for you on our Mid-Michigan High School football preview. Be sure to follow me on social media at Austin Szumowicz, SZUMOWICZ, and tune into WNEM TV5 every Friday night for Friday Night Lights with Mark Pearson, Cole Martins, and myself.
Hi, this is Brian Calloway of the Lansing State Journal previewing high school football in Greater Lansing. My 3 players to watch in our area are Jace Clarizio of East Lansing, Kason Carswell of Mason, and Hazlitt Jr. Corey Amakri. Clarizio is committed to Michigan State. He was a 1,000-yard rusher for East Lansing last season despite just playing 7.5 games, and he was a big piece as the Trojans made it to the state semifinals. Kason Carswell of Mason has been a big part of the Bulldogs' success over the last 3 years, which included helping them to the state runner-up finish last year. He's committed to Western Illinois. Corey Amakri is a guy that played in the shadows of his older brother Nakai in the Hazlitt program in the past, but figures to take on a larger role this season. He is ranked the number 8 junior in the state by 24/7 Sports. My 3 teams to keep an eye on in Greater Lansing are East Lansing, DeWitt, and Portland. East Lansing is coming off a run to the Division II state semifinals last season, and that was one of the deepest runs that program has had in roughly 15 years. Portland also was a state semifinal team last year in Division IV and has a lot of talent back from that squad. Coach John Navarra over at Portland always has good teams year in and year out, and this figures to be another year that they could be very strong. And DeWitt's the other team. DeWitt was bounced in the district final last year by Mason. They fell short of winning a conference title as well too, but they have a lot of talent back on that roster, and they were pretty young last year, and they figured to make a jump this year. Coach Rob Zimmerman said this squad has resembled his state championship group of 2020 and the group that finished as a state runner-up in 2021. The 3 storylines in Greater Lansing include last year we had 5 teams that made it to the state semifinals, and it'll be interesting to see what is in store this year and if Greater Lansing can mirror something like that again. The rise of the city schools is another thing in Greater Lansing. We had 2 of the 3 city schools, Everett and Sexton, that made the playoffs last season, and that was the first playoff appearance in a few years for both of those programs. It'll be interesting to see if both of those programs can build off of what they were able to do last season. The other big storyline, I think, is surrounding Mason and Corunna, which were the big stories in the area last year as they both finished 13-1 and as a state runner-up in their divisions. Both of those teams lost a number of key components from their state runner-up teams last year, so it'll be interesting to see how these teams go about their business this year with some new players taking on larger roles. Follow me at Brian_Calloway, that is BRIAN_CALLOWAY on X. For 3 Point Podcast, this is Brian Calloway of the Lansing State Journal.
Well, we'll get this thing rolling with our first prep spotlight of the season presented by Jacobs Insurance. Next up, joining us, our Prep Pigskin Preview, our 3 Point Podcast Coach of the Year from a year ago, Steve Herrick. And Coach, we're going to be taking a look at this year's squad, I promise. But I got to ask you, after last year's great run to Ford Field, can you give us some of your reflections on, the team and the community, how just looking back on it, what a thrill it had to be.
Yeah, it was, there's still times and things that come up. We try to, obviously I'm not looking back right now, but throughout entire, January to just about August, where things would happen, people you'd see that you hadn't seen in years, and they'd actually tell you, hey, I was at the game. I was at B-Dubs. I was, I was following you on 3 Point. They followed you guys and would listen and pull you guys up just to hear the game recaps, or whatever that was. And I thought that was the best part, and all 4 of us are hometown Corunna guys, and we love our community and we love the people around it. And so the fact that it brought, not only do we have so much fun coaching and playing, but that it brought so much pride and community back to a great community that we love. That was the second coolest part, let's say. So, yeah,
I mean, you could, being at Ford Field, I'd be curious if did you ever tell your players, I mean, you're in the moment, you're playing the game, but to kind of take a second, like turn around and look up in the crowd and like look at, try and soak this moment in for a second, because I think as fans, you're into the game. We're all hyped up, adrenaline's running. I can't imagine as a player or coach, of course, but you look around and you're like, this is actually incredible. We're about filling up this whole half of Ford Field. Meanwhile, the Grand Rapids side is, half full or whatever. They're used to making runs to Ford Field or whatever. But did you ever like kind of have a moment or even try to tell your players, like, take a second and soak this in real quick? Because what we're doing right now is pretty awesome.
We talked about that. I mean, we talked about taking a peek, but make sure you stayed focused.
Sure.
Everything about that week, everything about that. I mean, the season in general, but the week, it was, I I think from the time got on the bus leaving Ypsilanti until I got home, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna be conservative. I went through about 30 to 40 texts and about 10 or 12 phone calls, both congratulatory and to all the guys I knew around the state. I'm like, what the heck do we do now? What does that week look like? What does that schedule look like? What do we do to make sure? Because the biggest thing, whether I'm in school as a teacher and administrator and now as a coach, my thing always is I want the best for the kids at Corunna. I want them to have what other people have. I don't want them to ever miss out on anything. So that was my first thing, is I want to do the best we can, whether we win or lose. And unfortunately, it didn't come out how we wanted, but I want to put us in the best position and make sure they get everything from like what you're talking about, from the just the atmosphere and soaking it in and understanding that this is a lifetime thing for them.
Yeah.
So that they get that, but at the same time, preparing them to play that game.
Right.
So I was trying to do that, trying to have the kids focus. I honestly looked, I will tell you this, and you'd be surprised. I looked up when we came out, mostly just trying to see where my wife and family were. Mm-hmm. But it was that one look, almost I had to stop looking, and I didn't look again until the game was over to see where people were. But I never had so many people in one spot that I actually almost intimately knew who they were. Yeah. It was it's like every one of them was Waldo, when you're
right. It was.
There wasn't somebody almost like I did. I'm sure there were lots of people maybe higher, but everywhere I looked, there was somebody I knew from some point in my life, whether as a student or as a coach, somebody I coached, somebody I taught, somebody I lived in the neighborhood with, in Vernon, in Corunna, wherever. And that's what made it. I think that's what made that, and that made it so special. Oh yeah. But I will say this. The other part that you guys, if you don't want to ask this question, I'll just come out and say it, is that there were regrets. The not being their part. I'm a visual learner guy. So I have to see it. I have to go through it. And so after doing that, I can tell you, riding the bus ride home, there was like so many situational things, so many things from pregame choices to actually plays and things we did where I just was like, son of a gun, God dang it,
Sure. Right.
And I could just do this over, which you can't. There's never a do-over in life, but I would do it differently. It was what it was, but just the things that would have maybe put us in a little better position, because if we would, I truly believe if we would have had a better first quarter, we could have made it a different game. That we came out third quarter just like I hoped. We came out and played Corunna football third quarter and put ourselves in the position. Got really mad both during the game, obviously, and then post-game press conference. I made a couple comments about the MHSAA. Thankfully, they don't find coaches in high school. That's good. Right. I ain't got no money, so I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah, Jared's dad wouldn't be happy about that.
No, no, and Corunna Public Schools, but no, because the thing that upset me the most about that, and obviously that it didn't win or lose the game. It didn't lose the game for us, but it was a contributing factor that really bugged me. Was when we went to the MHSAA's office on Sunday. One of the things they reiterated over and over again about the replay is you need to know these 9 things that you can challenge. There's only 2 that will come from the booth. These 9 things. So make sure before you do it, don't make a mistake. They hammered it home. And it's like, my God, we have 9 things that you want us to remember, but you can't even remember 2.
Right.
Because that play with that, it was not a reviewable call.
Right.
And I don't fault their coach. Hal had done the same thing. After they spent 10 minutes, it seemed like a lifetime doing it. And then he goes, okay, now I'll review it too. Or telling us they couldn't review it.
Right.
Okay, I'll review it. Well, that's just it's just smart coaching, but
I hope they address the replay. I'm with you. It was the game. It must have felt like an eternity on the sidelines, because it definitely felt like it. Watching the game, the replays, and just how that would affect the game, let alone the actual impact it had overturning calls that shouldn't have been overturned.
Right.
Kind of maybe moving forward, I guess ahead to this year, you've been through a lot of summers and fall camps as a head coach. What's it been like getting the team prepared this year after coming off a year like that? Has it been more difficult, or do you think it's been easier kind of getting the kids to buy in and come every day ready to lift, ready to work? Has it been easier or tougher in that sense?
I think it's been a little bit of both. I mean, I don't think it's been, that's the kind of a cop-out answer, Jared. Sorry about that, but
Okay.
I don't think, kids are kids. Obviously some kids that are obviously more prepared to play. The older, more experienced you are. So we're a little less experienced this year as collectively as a group. We do have 7 starters back on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
But collectively behind those players, we are young and inexperienced. So trying to get them to understand the speed of the game, understand responsibility, understand what it takes, which is another reason why, and I hope it helps, because I mean, it was an up and down scrimmage. We took some lumps and we gave some lumps, but that was one of the reasons why we went up to Frankenmuth. I don't want to step into a scrimmage after the last year that we had and have it be so easy on our kids that they think everything's going to be easy. We went in scrimmage Pontiac Notre Dame. We went in scrimmage Frankenmuth, and then you throw in a Division III school like Flushing, who's got a new coach. I mean, that was our scrimmage. And if I'm Fowler, I'm probably thinking, okay, we'll see how Corunna's going to be. Right. But we played Frankenmuth and Notre Dame. They're going to be there. They're going to be there in the fall. They're going to be there in week 11, week 12, whatever that looks like, depending on the bracket comes out. And I think I'd rather measure myself against that moving forward, so that kids going back to your question, Jared, have a realistic view. That's sure. And so I think it helped them, be honest about where they're at, and what we have to do to get better and be successful this season. So.
Well, you noted it a little bit there, Steve. You got 7 starters back on both sides of the ball. You did definitely lose some top-notch talent, but as a head coach and a head of a program, you just want to refill those holes. Now, if you look at your team this year, and at least me as a broadcaster type, I know how important it is on both sides of the ball on the line of scrimmage. And you got some studs there. You got 3 studs you can build around, and Merva, Brieger, and Cody. And I don't know who else you got filling in beside them, but that's a good starting point, isn't it?
It is, and that's, Scott Moeller, who we all know, he used to always try to convince me, maybe because I was coming in, I played running back and receiver and stuff. And he's like, well, hey, Steve, it's at the line. I'm like, yeah, well, okay, if nobody's running the ball, then what the hell do you got?
Right.
But we're gonna really see this year. We're gonna start with a really good offensive line. Not only do we have those 3 guys back, Brendan Yarmouth started at center last year, but Colton Beela got a lot of time at center as well. I think, and I'm saying this tongue in cheek, so if Colton ends up watching this, I'm sure he will. The only hard part for Colton sometimes is he's one of the top long snappers in the entire state. So making that exchange with the quarterback, he's got to take a little fire off it sometimes. Right. And making sure he doesn't just burn it through Caden Cowdery. And then our left tackle, I think if there's one thing that always seems to be the case, at least some point in my coaching, is that we always seem to need a left tackle. Now, last year, Austin Oginski did a great job, but my first year back in 2021, we had 3 or 4 offensive linemen, and we were, God, where's that left tackle? Back when Matt played, where I was like, where's that left tackle? Mm-hmm. Right. And if Coach Beldig is listening, he knows he can't lie. He played left tackle, and we're still looking for a left tackle. But Jaden Barker, Tyler Lunston, Levi Miller, we got a couple guys that we're looking at that are juniors. Actually, Malachi Anderson's a senior, and Tyler's a senior. But we have 2 juniors, 2 seniors looking to fill that hole there. And they're an incredible unit. Dane Zeman's back as our starting H-back. So, I mean, he's there as well. Sully Martin played some backup. He's a big, tall, lanky kid, but who can catch the ball. And he's back there as well as an H-back. So, yeah, I mean, up front, everything starts up front. And that's if you're going to have something, I guess if you can't have the dynamic quarterback back again. I mean, Caden's going to be a very good quarterback for us. It sounded bad, but somebody like Wyatt Bauer back, then definitely let's go with it.
I mean, that's not taking a shot at anyone. I mean, Wyatt's going to be running Tony Anese's offense here at some point. So, I mean, it's a pretty good compliment, actually. You talked about not looking back, but it's obviously hard not to. I mean, at some point, you probably still look back 20 years ago when I was playing, or when you were a player, things you could have done differently as a player to prepare, or things you could have done differently 20 years ago when you're a head coach. So I think that's just natural, but you're going to build off of last season, right? I mean, that's an awesome experience for those kids and the coaching staff to go through that whole the whole process.
It is, and I think you do bring up a good point, Matt. I mean, I think but most cases as a coach, obviously unfortunately, we're more pessimistic than we are optimistic about a lot of things. So more often than not, the lessons that we're going to, or the things that we'll look back on, I should say, are the lessons that they can learn from what necessarily didn't go always right, even in our best season as far as going to the state championship game. Hey, listen, I know we did win that game and we went here, but what we didn't do right that you can do better is this. Right. And even tonight, we watched film tonight and had our group together. And one of the things I told them was, listen, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, 10 years from now, you can look back on what this season looks like and talk about it. You can talk about what happened last year later. We got to focus on the present. We have to focus on what we're doing now. Yeah. Otherwise, those conversations won't necessarily be as fun. I mean, you're going to be able to talk about Frankfurt. You're going to be able to talk about, all the fun things you did, in different places and times that we do. We try to build a complete program and a lot of fun things outside of football as well. But ultimately, you want to be able to talk more about the football games and the ones you won, and versus just talking about the periphery stuff that makes it cool, but not what football's all about. So.
It's a lot more fun to say that we played at Ford Field and the whole town of Corunna was sitting behind us than, oh man, we went 5-4 and just missed the playoffs. I mean, 20 years from now, when you're at your class reunion, like Ted just was at his 50th. Yeah. That's what you're going to talk about. It's a lot more fun to talk about that. I got one more for you. I know Jared wants to jump in. You talked about building a complete program. Yep. And I think that's something we've talked to you about this before, but I think it's so cool to see how far Corunna has come in that sense, because back when, I was going through, Kicks was starting up, but it wasn't a top down full on program all the way down to the 3rd, 4th, 5th graders, running Corunna football, the same offense, the same defense type of thing. And I know because I still have some friends who coach youth football and are still involved a lot, back home. So they keep me up to date. Yeah, that's going on, and how cool it is for those 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th graders to watch those seniors. I mean, I still remember vividly going to Atwood Stadium and watching that team in the mid 90s play at Atwood Stadium. And that was such a big thing as a, 10, 11-year-old. I could do this. When I get up to varsity, I could be out there like these guys are. How big is that for those, hopefully you're still the head coach in 10 years or, I don't know what your plans are, but, for those young kids, to see Wyatt Bauer out there, to see Jaden Eddington, and then now playing at Ferris State and stuff like that, that's huge. I mean, that just makes those kids want to do that when they're on varsity.
100%. And that's, that's where it all starts. And I think that's what, I share with any coach that asks, about what do you guys do? And what, can you give any tips? And I said, get your youth going. I mean, no matter the sport, you have to have, that's where it starts at. And like you're talking about, it's the buy-in. And I would tell you that it's obviously kids in Corunna enjoy, being in Corunna and playing football for Corunna. But, it has a lot to do with last year too, but we have record numbers right now in our youth program. That's cool. My 7th grade son, Griffin, I'll give you kind of a little sample. He has an anomaly school. In his class is an anomaly. They only have 100 kids, smallest class out of 13 classes, 13 grades in Corunna, smallest one by far. And so they have about 62, 63 boys out of the 100. And his football team has 32 boys on it.
Wow.
You start doing the math on it, you go, holy cow, but we average 30 kids per team. Our 8th grade is the smallest one. They have about 25 kids, but we have 31, 32, 33 kids at the 5th grade level, the 6th grade level, the 7th grade level, and the 4th and 5th grade level. Which ideally we just don't have the resources for 3 teams, right. But we have over 50 kids playing 3rd and 4th grade football. So you're talking 25 kids on a team. On top of that, one of the things that I did in 2015, we had a gap. And another one of those things that I was talking about earlier, where I don't want our kids to miss out. I want our kids to have every experience that anybody else has. There was a gap there where our younger kids weren't playing flag football. They didn't have a league for that. So in 2015, I started a flag football in conjunction with the Corunna Youth Football Program. We had 22 kids that first year, and last year we had 93. kindergarten through third graders playing flag football. And so it's just a great thing. And that funnels in, you get those kids in third grade that aren't ready to play tackle football yet, but they may want to in fourth and fifth. It also has been a great thing. We also, I will say this, we also get 10 or 12 girls that are playing. And this, obviously, Chris Fritching and the Detroit Lions have made a huge push for that. We'll see how that evolves in the future. Chris is a good friend of mine. But the huge push with the girls flag football, growing across the country. So hopefully down the road, that's something that we can have as well in Corunna, but we'll see that. But yeah, you build the program, you build teammates of yours, friends of yours that, they have, I know exactly who you're talking to and about, because I see them on weeknights in the practice fields behind the high school and yesterday we had a big scrimmage at the high school, went from 7:30 in the morning till 8:00 at night, believe it or not. Wow. So it was crazy, but it was awesome.
That's so fun.
It is cool to see the youth program, because maybe not every team that comes through Corunna is going to be able to make it to Ford Field, but it's definitely going to raise the floor of this program, and it's going to create a nice basis from when I was a kid, when watching 0-9 teams go through. Hopefully now it's, every team's going to be pretty darn good. So that's exciting. Right. Looking ahead to this upcoming game coming up on, do you guys play Thursday or Friday?
We're playing Thursday night.
Thursday against Fowlerville. I know you're just kind of starting your prep for that game, but what can you kind of tell us about Fowlerville, and what do you think maybe a couple of the keys are going to be to end up winning game number 1?
Well, the cool thing about playing Fowlerville, and it's true with this team for sure, is that all the names, and it's just like Matt's talking about with 2000, the younger guys, but Fowlerville, they got Schraders and Copelands and everybody else coming through. It's just like being playing Corunna. You got Herricks and everybody else. All these old names coming through that keep rolling by. And so Matt Copeland is the head coach now at Fowlerville. Matt Copeland, he's the same age as my brother Rob, who's assistant coach. And actually they got together last year before the game, and Brett Schrader's a defensive coach there, and he played. All three of those guys played against each other. And probably, Ted, I don't know if you did the game in 1993. It was a freezing cold game. Corunna ended up winning 8-7 on a crazy 2-point conversion.
We have it. Yep.
And actually, Fowlerville and Corunna were probably two of the best teams in the state, but they only took 4 from that. It was 4 in that region. And you're talking now there's about 495 11-man schools in Michigan now. And in 1993, you had about 800. Wow. So, I mean, when you're talking about, instead of having like 30 teams in a region, that's not true. It'd be 6 or whatever it was. I mean, it's almost double the number. So you had those two teams. They both finished 7-2, and both of them missed the playoffs, but it was just a tremendous football game. But Copeland and my brother, and they're all on there. And I think that's what we're going to expect. Fowlerville is a tough team. They get after it. They do, we're back to seeing, Matt remembers this, Jared. I don't know if you do. I think, did we play Fowlerville, Jared? I forget.
We lost. Yes.
Okay, that sucks. But I think they got away from it when you were playing, but they're back to doing that same old thing. I call it the Fowlerville thing, where whether the play's good or bad, they sprint over and congratulate each other.
Right.
And you can tell that's their history. That's what they do. I mean, that's great. I mean, that's Fowlerville. That's what they do. But Matt's a great coach. He's a tough-nosed guy. I mean, the Schrader kids. You got 2 Schrader kids for Fowlerville. One's a junior, one's a senior, I believe. One plays quarterback, one plays as a backup quarterback, running back. Another one's a receiver. They're good kids. The quarterback's decent. I think his last name's Soley. He's number 4. I listened to him talk on a different podcast because I had to follow him on something, but I know he was talking about their offensive line being a little bit of their concern for them. They have guys, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, right.
He said it's one of those things when you ask the coach, okay, if you had to pick a spot, so that was the spot he picked. That's I don't mind that. Because we're strong there. It's rather than matching strength for strength, maybe we can help out a little bit there. But we have, but on the other end, our secondary, our receivers, they're young, so that's going to be a spot where we have to grow up really fast. And but it'll be a good game. I don't think it's definitely not going to be anything like the last couple of years where we were significantly better. I think it's going to be a pretty evenly matched game, and it'll be like Fowlerville, Corunna the past. We'll see what happens. So.
Good matchup, good rivalry. It goes way back. Even in the 60s, I remember Fowlerville and Corunna back when Nick Anise was coaching. I'll leave you with this, Steve. Kids do like to hear their names on radio or podcast. On the offensive side of the ball, you mentioned a little bit, Caden Cowdery. How's his development? I mean, he obviously impressed us last year in some limited action, but some big-time pressure action against Goodrich. How's his development? And then I got to follow up after that, and then we'll let you go.
Sure. No, Caden's doing well. Actually, when Tony came, Tony Neese came down for the Ferris camp. We had he came down and did one for us in Flushing at Corunna, which is really cool. And they were impressed with Caden running the option. I think that's probably his best attribute. Not that he doesn't throw the ball well. I mean, he can throw the ball, but which you did see in the Goodrich game. But but he runs the ball really well. So I mean, we're looking forward to that. He does that really well, and gets kids involved. He's not a one receiver guy, so he'll look to find the open receivers and throw there. But we just want to get him confident, which he has confidence. But Jared, I mean, no, it doesn't matter whether you're junior or senior. When you step on the field for that first varsity game as a starter, it's you can think of what you think it feels like, but it never feels that way, does it?
Right.
No. And I was going to also ask Steve. I'm sorry, Jared. Go ahead.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I was just going to say on the defensive side of the ball, you mentioned it a little bit. You're young in the defensive backfield. Bryce Eddington, he's a two-way good player for you, but you got some holes there. We'll see question marks how the new kids step up. Linebacking, Zeman. I mean, I call him the demon, man. He'll be all over the place.
Yeah.
And then you got those three guys on the defensive line. So that secondary is the only thing I look at defensively. A little bit of a question mark. How's that coming along?
Yeah, no, it's a development. It's a work in progress. We have athletic kids back there. Lucas Curran came on at the end of the year, had to play some, definitely in the playoffs more than we anticipated. With, if you remember, Caden Cowdery got injured and got a concussion in the Notre Dame game. So Lucas came in and played in the playoffs. So he's going to be back there probably at the free safety spot. Caden will play as well, but obviously, we don't have the. One of the things we don't have this year as opposed to previous years is we don't have an established backup. 3 years ago, you had my son Jaden, and then here's Wyatt. And then, last couple of years, Wyatt and Caden, and we were solid. And now, we have people playing, we have a backup quarterback. But, we don't want to necessarily throw them out there and have a situation happen where now, we're stuck with that. So, but, we also have a couple younger guys that have really shown well during the summer. Oda Wilkerson, surprisingly, and I'd say this very my son Logan Herrick has actually played pretty well. I know probably my kids will tell you I'm the worst person in the world to play for. Anybody else?
Well, typical.
Play for anybody but their dad, they'd probably be a lot better off. But it's his unfortunate choice that he made. But Logan's been doing pretty well. So.
All right. Well, listen, Steve, we appreciate the time. Thanks for being a part of this special podcast, and good luck to the Cavaliers. And we'll definitely be checking in with you. And the first game is going to be on the radio for anybody that can't make it. But I got to believe there's going to be a whole lot of people there at the Nick.
Oh, yeah.
Certainly hope so. It's great talking to you guys. We'll see you soon.
Right. Thanks, Coach. We'll talk to you later.
Hello, everybody. It's Brady Beedon of GetStuckOnSports.com, covering everything Blue Water area sports out here on the east side. Football's back, so let's get right to it. My 3 players to watch in the Blue Water area starts with a combo meal up at Port Huron Northern. Tight end Lincoln Watkins and DB Amir Moreland combined for over 30 D1 offers. Watkins holds offers from Wisconsin, Penn State, the U, Oregon, among many others, while Moreland has offers from Penn State, Michigan State, and many more soon to follow. This duo will be all over the field, both offensively and defensively, for the Port Huron Northern Huskies this year. The next player to watch is at Marine City. Their captain, running back Paul Muscat. He was baptized by fire a couple seasons ago. Muscat is now that grizzled vet. He's likely to get the bulk of the carries for a Marine City team that has been dominant, especially on the ground, for over a quarter of a century. Touchdown Paul Muscat is a sentence I hope I'm saying a lot during the 2024 campaign. I also want to give a quick bonus shout out to Richmond specialist Colton Bartels. the senior has committed to punt for the Ohio University Bobcats. This year, he opens the season against St. Clair. Next year, he'll open his campaign at the Horseshoe against the Ohio State Buckeyes. My 3 teams to keep an eye on start off with the Armada Tigers. Kyle Rowley took over the program in 2020 and has transformed Armada into a football town. While last year had a few disappointing losses, including a district semifinal loss to Lutheran North in a 54-49 shootout, Armada returns 20 starters. If there is ever a year for these Armada Tigers to finally break through and make a deep run in the postseason, it certainly feels like 2024 is that year. For the next team to look out for, I'm going to stay in the BWAC and head to Krebs Field and talk about the North Branch Broncos. Chris Sikora is in his second season as head ball coach for the Broncos, and he has a glutton of talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Giovanni Travis, Jaden Hutchinson, and Mason Howe, among many others, will lead a formidable North Branch defense. And I would be remiss to mention North Branch and not bring up the big man, Eli Bickle. The 6'6", 260-pound junior has an offer from Cincinnati, most of the MAC, and many more sure to come in the near future. My final team to look out for is once again from the BWAC, the Division VI runners-up from a year ago, the Almont Raiders. Almont is the epitome of consistency in the BWAC. Head coach James Loosby is the senior member of the league and brings back a plethora of talent from last year's squad. Chase Batani returns much to the chagrin of many D coordinators, along with quarterback Chase Davidowski and most other position players for the Raiders. Ford Field is directly in the crosshairs of Almont this season. My first storyline to look at brings us to Port Huron High, home of the Redhawks. 3-year starters Amari Holler, Gavin Troy, and Noah Myuri have all graduated and are playing in the college ranks. But that doesn't mean PH is rebuilding. The Redhawks are as deep as they've ever been up front. Jackson Rowe takes over as the signal caller, but has started at many other positions over the last 2 seasons. If you aren't busy on September 27th, make your way to Memorial Stadium for the Crosstown Showdown between Port Huron High and Port Huron Northern, one of the best rivalries in the state of Michigan. My second storyline to keep an eye on is the new coach and culture at St. Clair. Andrew Zolkowski comes over from Ferris State. A member of Tony Anese's staff during their national championship runs, Zolkowski has brought a renewed sense of energy to the Saints program. Coming off a disappointing 2-7 2023 campaign, St. Clair is trying to get back into the MAC Silver mix and earn a postseason berth. Will Andrew Zolkowski be the guy to do it? Time will tell, but the vibes are undeniably high for the St. Clair team going into Week 1. My final storyline involves the Croslex Pioneers. Much like the aforementioned Port Huron Redhawks, a few pillars of the Pioneer program have graduated. Longtime running back Belly Grappi and quarterback Gavin Espinoza were 2 explosive pieces for Mike Holes and Croslex last year. However, Coach Holes feels he has an absolute dude coming in at quarterback. Freshman Jax Johnston comes in and will be given the keys to the car before he even has his license. You can follow myself, Brady Beedon, at Brady_Beedon, or follow Get Stuck on Sports at G_StuckOnSports. For 3 Points Podcast, I'm Brady Beedon.
What's up, guys? This is Tyler Graham, Michigan High School Football Frenzy and Prep Red Zone, bringing you 3 teams, 3 players, and a couple divisions to keep an eye on this fall. We'll start with our first player, James Young. Transfer out of North Muskegon, will be taking his talents over to Muskegon High after leading the Norsemen to a 12-1 record with an appearance in the D7 semifinals. It'll be interesting to see how he adjusts to a new offense and elevated competition. Next up, we've got Braden Daniels, a quarterback out of Rockford. 2026 gunslinger will take the reins on the offense for the Rams in Week 1 against Cass Tech. Seems like Rockford always has an elite quarterback play, and from what I've seen from Daniels so far, I have pretty lofty expectations. He's athletic, can get out of the pocket, and has a strong arm and plays the exact style that the Rams always seem to thrive. Last player I want to highlight is athlete Max Macklem from Goodrich. The Do Everything Martian will be playing on Saturdays at Central Michigan next year, but this season he'll look to have a team deep in the playoffs again for the 3rd straight season. I predict he's going to probably have a pretty historic senior season this fall. Moving on to the teams, we'll start with Montague. They're going to be young, they're going to be playing a really tough schedule, but I think they're on a really upward trajectory. They're solid offensively, they're solid defensively, and they have a ton of size up front that should wreak havoc against some of their stout competition. Next up, the Noel Dean era is officially underway in Chelsea. I don't know if you'd consider them exactly a sleeping giant, but after a couple down years for the Dogs and a small break from Michigan high school football for Dean, the rebuild is officially on in Chelsea. Look for a night and day difference in Chelsea in 2024. Finally, I'll highlight a team on the rise after an extremely disappointing 0-9 season in 2023. Brother Rice comes into 2024 with a coaching staff revamped and a coach coming off of a D1 state title in Aaron Marshall from Southfield A&T. After all the research I've done, I still can't find another team with as much up-and-coming talent as Rice, so look for some big steps forward this year from Rice. Last, I've got a couple extremely competitive divisions that'll always be fun to follow. First off, I think Division 8 is going to be extremely wide open. Teams like Ottawa Lake Whiteford and Hudson being in D7 and an Ubley team that loses a ton, including on the coaching staff, leaves the door open for a plethora of teams. Beale City, Muskegon Catholic Central. We'll see who the sleepers are this fall. The other division I want to highlight is Division 5. It'll once again be a gauntlet. Grand Rapids Catholic Central and West Catholic will lead the way, but teams like Corunna will want to build off of last year, and we'll have a ton of talent at Notre Dame Prep and a perennial powerhouse Frankenmuth who will be in the mix and more. You can follow along with me all season long at Michigan High School Football Frenzy, at MICHFB Frenzy on Twitter, and follow all my articles at prepredzone.com. Thank you to the 3 Point Pod for having me back on again.
Hi, this is Tyler Young from Fox Sports Marquette giving you a look at UP football in 2024. 3 players to watch from the UP this year. Firstly, Ian Martela, the quarterback from Iron Mountain. He's going to be a senior this year. As a junior, he went 39 for 64, 998 yards, 15 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. And that is even more impressive when you consider the fact that he only played the first half of most games. His team was so good that by halftime they had their subs in. And he still put up those numbers, and that is after coming back from a horrible foot injury he sustained when he was mowing his lawn. He slipped, and his foot went under the lawnmower. Came back very, very strong, and I expect him to do well as a senior as well. Second player to watch from the UP, Caden Luma from Ishpeming. Luma played both ways for the Hematites. As a quarterback, went 53 for 83, 979 yards, and 8 touchdowns, plus another 735 rushing yards and 10 rushing touchdowns. On the defensive side of the football, Luma had 38 tackles, 3 of which were tackles for loss, 6 interceptions, 1 pick six, a fumble recovery, and a forced fumble. Luma will be a senior this year and will be a big part of the Hematites' transition to 8-player football. Finally, the third player to watch from the UP this year will be Cole Bige of Norway. He's going to be a senior. His junior season, 95 completions for 2,001 yards, 29 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, plus 21 rushes for 119 yards and 2 touchdowns rushing. He'll be a big part of Norway in 8-player football. Expect him to put up big numbers once again. 3 teams to look out for this year in the UP. We got to start with Menominee. They were the state runner-up in Division 7 last year, a 34-30 loss to Jackson Lumen Christi in the championship game. And while they're graduating a lot of talent, they're returning quite a bit as well. Wide receiver Tanner Turkoff was all-conference. He's only going to be a junior this coming season. And he's joined by all-conference lineman Lucas Thune. Menominee set to have a very good season once again this year. Another team to follow this year will be Iron Mountain, in a similar position to Menominee, having graduated a lot of talent. But a big part of what's returning for Iron Mountain is Ian Martela, the quarterback we talked about earlier. He's going to have a lot to say when it comes to their success. He was their quarterback last year, in a year where they put up a ton of points, and they didn't give up many either. Lost to Beale City in the regional 20-6, but until that point, they rolled through teams. Expect them to do well this year. Rounding out my top 3 teams in the UP this year is North Central. You can't have a conversation about UP football without talking about the North Central Jets. They have had a long string of success and a long string of Gorzinskis playing for them. They have that again this year. Lane Gorzinski as a running back last season, 121 carries for 1,237 yards, 20 touchdowns. Add to that 14 receptions for 177 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. And just for good measure, he went 12 of 21 for 221 yards, 3 touchdowns, passing the football. Lane Gorzinski coming back for North Central, along with a few of his teammates that are ready to make a push for the Jets. 3 storylines to follow through the year here in the UP. Paul Jacobson is entering his 25th year as the head coach of the Negaunee Miners football team. Took took over for longtime head coach Dick Koski in 2000, and he has had a very good 25 years with the Miners. Was in the state championship game just a few years ago. It was a loss to Grand Rapids West Catholic, but it was a team that he has said was maybe the best he has ever coached. He's hoping for another very successful season this year. The Menominee Maroons are another team to follow because they're bringing back some good talent, and they were in the state championship game last year. They lost by 4, but they were right in it. And this year they could have a similar run, given what they have coming back, given the talent that they have on the team. It'll be interesting to see if Menominee truly can reload and get back to that state championship game for the second year in a row. And finally, the Ishpeming Hematites, a team that won a state championship in 2015, has gone 8-player from Division 8. This will be their first year in 8-player football, and they don't have a conference. They made the decision too late to actually get into a conference, so they're playing sort of a mercenary schedule. They have several teams from Wisconsin, several teams from downstate. We'll see how the team transitions to 8-player football from a fairly successful 11-player team that won a playoff game last season. For the 3 Point Podcast, this is Tyler Young from Fox Sports Marquette.
Hello, this is Geoff Kimmerly from the Michigan High School Athletic Association, and these are my 3 storylines for the 2024 high school football season. This is always the nuts and bolts portion of the 3 Point Podcast preview. So we're going to look at one rules change, one format change, and something of a state of high school football in the state as a whole. Number 1, we do not have a lot of significant rules changes in football this year for the first time that I can remember. But the one that will affect people the most who are watching from the stands or from the press box, and if you're one of those fans or media, this is going to be huge for you. In football, uniforms must now have clear contrast between the colors of the jersey and the body of the numbers. For example, white numbers with a blue outline on a white jersey are no longer allowed. The visiting teams must wear white uniforms, and the home teams must wear dark jerseys that clearly contrast with white. Those white numbers on white jerseys or light gray on white or light gray have been impossible when it comes to identifying people on the field from the stands or the press box. This one for me is huge. I'm super excited about it. I think a lot of our spectators in the stands will feel the same way as well. Number 2, this one really only affects people who are maybe watching our championship games on TV or who come down to Detroit for the weekend, or of course the 16 teams will be playing. But our 11-player format, our finals format at Ford Field, will have a slightly different look beginning this season. We're back to Friday and Saturday after being Saturday and Sunday last season because Michigan State played at Ford Field on Friday. But in changing back to our traditional Friday and Saturday, we will begin our first games of both days at 9:30 a.m. and then those games will go 9:30, 12:30 p.m., 4 p.m., and 7 p.m., which should conclude both days a little bit earlier than usual, and they're obviously starting both days about half an hour earlier than we've done in the past. Our lineup for that Friday, November 29th, and this is a bit of a change as well, we'll start with Division 8 at 9:30, then we'll go Division 4, Division 6, and finish with Division 2 at 7 p.m. On November 30th, that Saturday, we'll start with Division 7 at 9:30, followed by Division 3 at 12:30, and Division 5 at 4 p.m. And Division 1 will close the weekend at 7 p.m. We finished with Division 1 last season, and that went over really well. And so we think that it's a pretty good move for spectators and teams and everyone involved. Finally, number 3, just a quick look at the state of football in the state of Michigan. And I think this is great news all the way around. From a participation standpoint, last year, football had 35,174 players in the state of Michigan. That was the most in the state of Michigan since 2018-19, and that was the 3rd consecutive year that number has increased. Moving into this season, we have 497 teams for 11-player football and 106 teams for 8-player football, with about a week to go before opening night. That total of football players from a year ago is more than 11,000 more than in any other sport played in this state at the high school level, as football remains not only the most popular sport for our athletes to play, but also the most well-attended sport for our spectators during the postseason. That's it from the MHSAA. Please follow us on Facebook and Instagram at MHSAA Sports and on X at MHSAA. For the 3 Point Podcast, this is Geoff Kimmerly.
My name is Jared Patel, the 3 Point Podcast, and I'm going to cover the Metro Detroit area, starting with my 3 teams to watch. Number 1, it is Chelsea. They've got a new man at the helm with former coach Josh Lucas out on the west side of the state, returning home to Jenison, which I'll be excited to see what he can do there. Yes, they have a new face in the building, and that is Noel Dean. Legendary coach, spent the last 3 years in Tift County, coaching in Georgia. To name a few of this guy's accolades, 2016 Hall of Fame inductee, numerous state titles, 25 consecutive winning seasons. Simply put, when I think of somebody that someone would describe as a quote-unquote old ball coach, I think of Noel Dean. He is taking over a program that has had some success. For years and years at this point. Since 1966, they've only had 5 coaches at Chelsea. And as I just mentioned, Lucas won a state title at this program in 2021. So he's going to hit the ground running with Chelsea. I cannot wait to see what they do. They're going to be a fun team to watch. They're going to be coached up right. In my opinion, spoiler alert, I think they're going to have a few state titles when we look back on his time here at Chelsea. My only question, will they run the somewhat inside beer iteration they ran at Lowell for all those years, or did maybe Coach Dean learn some new tricks in Georgia? Regardless, whatever he's going to do, it's going to win some ball games, and I can't wait to watch what that program does. Moving on, speaking of winning coaches, number 2, my team to watch, Jackson Lumen Christi. They won Division 7 last year. This year, they are up a division in Division 6 now. Herb Brogan, back for his 46th season, looking to win his 3rd straight title, 14th title of his career. Talk about a legend. Maybe this guy. Honestly, he probably should have the title of old ball coach. But they're reloading this year, looking for their 3rd straight. The key guy they're going to rely on is their running back, 35th ranked player in the state, committed to Central Michigan, Kadale Williams. Really burst on the scene last year in the state title game. Versman nominee with 276 yards rushing and 3 TDs. In the second game this year, they play Pontiac Notre Dame Prep, which I think is just going to be a great measuring stick for both these schools early in the season. But rinse and repeat, every year that Herb Brogan is still going to be a coach at Jackson Lumen Christi. They're going to be one of my teams to watch. Just a great program that, flat out, they're not winning a state title. It's a bit of a disappointing year. So it's going to be exciting to see them up a division in Division 6. Let's see if the success will translate. All right, my number 3 team to watch coordinates well with my number 1 player to watch, and that is Belleville and the Belleville Tigers. And, of course, quarterback supreme, Bryce Underwood, committed to LSU. Belleville is going to go how Bryce goes. Honestly, in my opinion, one of the most impressive recruits or players I've ever seen with my own 2 eyes in the state of Michigan. He had his pick of the litter wherever he wanted to go. Literally number 1 player in the 2025 class in the entire nation. I know he had a goal of winning 4 straight titles coming into high school, but because, unfortunately, they were upset last year by Southfield A&T and Isaiah Marshall, who is at Kansas now, he's going to have to live with 3 out of 4, which is still pretty damn good, if you ask me. You remember Southfield A&T ended Belleville's 38-game winning streak last year, which, ironically enough, tied the winning streak of former Corunna and New Lothrop legend Nick Anise, who is Tony Anise's dad from back in the day, who won 38 straight games at New Lothrop High School in the 50s and 60s. Belleville's my pick to be the best team in the state and to win Division 1. I would be shocked if they didn't win, and I'd be even more shocked if their star quarterback, Bryce Underwood, doesn't win the Mr. Football Award given out at the end of the season. It's going to be fun to watch them. They're going to definitely obliterate some teams, but it'll be interesting to see come playoff time if they can keep the momentum going and rectify last year's loss. Belleville, going to be a fun team to watch, and Bryce Underwood, my number 1 player. Let's go into my number 2 player. And my number 2 player is, of course, Corey Sadler Jr. out of Cass Tech. If you listen to last year's podcast, you heard me wax poetic about this guy. He is impressive. I've never seen a true freshman like he did 2 years ago come on to Cass Tech, maybe the most talented team in the entire state year after year, and be the best player. He is going to have his pick of the litter wherever he wants to go to school. But in terms of pure electricity, he's my number 1 player, maybe in the entire country. At just 5'10", 170 pounds, he's a little bit small, but my God, is he fast and quick and tough, especially tough. plays all over the field, takes snaps at quarterback, wide receiver, corner, returns kicks, returns punts. I'm not sure if he actually even leaves the field. But the big story with him this year, obviously he's going to be vying with Bryce Underwood for that Mr. Football Award, but can he get Cass Tech over the hump? He was close a couple years ago, his freshman year. Can he get Cass Tech over the hump and win a state title for them? Something they haven't done in a while. It'll be interesting to see. Corey Sadler Jr., in my opinion, a definition of a quote-unquote super athlete. Cannot wait to watch this guy. And he's going to have a big coming out party this upcoming Thursday or Friday. I'm not entirely sure on the date, against Rockford in what I think is the most fun matchup of the season. Corey Sadler Jr., that's my number 2 player to watch. And my number 3 player to watch is one of my favorite kids in the entire state, Deshaun Lanier out of Chip Valley. Wide receivers heading to Bowling Green. He's 25th ranked senior in the state. Maybe a little bit undervalued. I think he's going to have one hell of a season. He's going to have an expanded role this year. He's not going to have a Schuster brother, which they've had 3 of them at quarterback at Chip Valley. All of them have gone on to play college football. He's going to have a new quarterback this season, and he's going to have higher expectations with legendary coach Scott Merchant, who won a state title with Chip Valley in the late 2010s, is now moved on to Lawrence Tech. It's going to be interesting to see the type of season Deshaun Lanier has. I mean, it's hard to beat what he did last year for Chip Valley with over 73 catches, 1,100 yards, and 15 touchdowns. But my God, great kid, electric on the field, similar to Corey Sadler, returns punts, returns kick, does it all, plays defense, cornerback as well. Going to be fun to see what he does, and I wouldn't be surprised if he eclipses over 1,500 yards receiving this year. Again, that's my number 3 player to watch, Deshaun Lanier, Bowling Green commit, Chip Valley wide receiver, expect to have an expanded role this season with a new quarterback and a new head coach. Can't wait to see what he does. Let's move on to my 3 storylines to watch. And my number 1 story to watch in the Metro Detroit area, not only even Metro Detroit, this is across the entire state, and that is Detroit Mumford and new defensive coordinator Connor Stallions. I mean, need I say more? We all know him from his time at Michigan, but let's just look at this guy's resume on paper. If he was applying for a defensive coordinator job at your school. Graduated from a service academy, spent time working on their football program there, spent time working on Jim Harbaugh's staff at Michigan. I mean, honestly, in a time where coaches are at a need right now in the state, why not give this guy a shot? I mean, he didn't hurt anybody, didn't kill anybody, just recorded some signals. Let's see what he can do at Detroit Mumford. But in all seriousness, this is going to be an interesting story to follow. Last year, Detroit Mumford just 1-8 and allowed 34.5 points per game. Can Coach Stallions and this defense improve on their win total and, more importantly, improve on their points per game allowed? It'll be fun to see either way, and time will tell. Moving on, number 2 storyline, Brother Rice and new head coach Aaron Marshall. He was the head coach at the previously mentioned Southfield A&T championship team last year, where his nephew Isaiah Marshall led the way in what many considered to be a big upset against Belleville, a game in which I thought, honestly, Southfield A&T was very well prepared for and had a great game plan for. So Aaron Marshall comes from Southfield A&T to now Brother Rice, the program that's really been struggling, especially the last 2 years. 5-4 2 years ago, 0-9 last year. I think the only time in school history they haven't won a football game in a season. He's coming in with a lot to do, but in my opinion, give him 2, 3, 4 years. I really think this program is going to get back to what they once were. It's a bit of a homecoming. Him and his brothers all played for Brother Rice back in the 90s, and all of them went on to have college careers and were studs in high school. From what I've heard, they have one hell of a freshman class coming that'll be seniors in 2029, and if he can just work his way up, we saw with Southfield A&T how he kind of took some lumps having a younger roster as they finally became the team to beat their senior year last year, and they ended up winning a state title. They're going to have some lumps in the road rebuilding this Brother Rice program, but I honestly do think 2 to 3 years when this quote-unquote stud freshman class is coming up, they're going to be the team to beat, and they're going to get Brother Rice back to what they once were way back when. All right, my 3rd and final storyline to watch is Detroit MLK and their new coach, Terrell Patrick. He's been an assistant in the program for a long time. He's taking over for former head coach Tyrone Spencer, who is now on the west side at East Kentwood. My favorite part of the entire thing, they didn't lose any of their assistant coaches to East Kentwood, and 14 of their assistants are actually graduates from Martin Luther King High School, so they all know what it's like to be a Crusader. They're going to rely on a couple of key senior defensive ends in Xavier Newsom and Willie Fletcher Jr., who are both extremely highly touted. And another one of their stud players, their junior running back, Michael Dukes, who nearly rushed for 1,000 yards last season as a sophomore. It's going to be fun to watch this story. Can they keep MLK at the prominence they've found under Tyrone Spencer? And also, can they get back to Ford Field? Last year they lost to eventual runner-up Mason in the Division III semifinals. Can they get back to Ford Field, get back to the greatness they've felt under Dante Moore and all the state titles they've seen in the last 10 plus years? Can they do it? I think they will. Coach Terrell Patrick going to be fun to watch his new regime take over at Detroit MLK. And that was the Metro Detroit region. My name is Jared Patel of the 3 Point Podcast. What a fun year it's going to be. Can't wait to see it all unfold. If you did not know, Detroit, of all the cities in the entire nation last year, had the most rostered NFL players at the start of last season. I'm sure it'll be the same this year. A lot of talent comes from here, a lot of fun storylines as well, and obviously some great coaches. Thanks for listening, and let's have a great football season.
Hey everyone, it's Sam Ali with your prep football preview of the Saginaw Bay City Midland area. Here are 3 players to watch. Number 1, Dow's Garland's Randolph. We kick things off with a junior who is already one of the most explosive players in our area, and with the return of almost every offensive lineman, the speedster will have every opportunity to light up the scoreboard. Number 2, Ithaca's Jackson Kahn. As a junior, Kahn combined to score 33 touchdowns through the air and on the ground, helping the Yellow Jackets go undefeated in the regular season, and his dual threat abilities have the Yellow Jackets poised for their usual playoff appearance. Number 3, Frankenmuth's Derek Simmons, a mammoth of a man at 6'3" and 270 pounds. Simmons has already committed to joining the Michigan State football team, and he's got plans to get the Eagles back to Ford Field after their state semifinal loss last season. Now, here are my 3 teams to watch. Number 1, Saginaw United. The Phoenix is rising for the brand new program under former Arthur Hill star James King. There will certainly be some growing pains in the early going, but this new era of Saginaw football could surprise some people. Number 2, Bullock Creek. The Lancers were the Cinderella team of the 2024 season, shocking everyone with a district title championship, and they feel more than capable of a repeat and an even deeper run under new head coach and former defensive coordinator Jerry Orr. Number 3, Heritage. So what will the Hawks do for an encore? Last season, they won their first district title since 2001, but a historic senior class that included record-breaking wideout Braylon Isom is gone, so Heritage has some big shoes to fill if they want to win their first ever regional championship. And now here are my 3 storylines to look for. Number 1, conference changes. There will be some new scenery for some local teams. That includes Standish Sterling, who are in the Jack Pine Conference and looking to make it back to the playoffs after a 1-year hiatus. And after decades of playing in the Tri-Valley Conference, Birch Run will be competing this upcoming season in the Mid-Michigan Activities Conference. Number 2, division changes. 56 teams across the entire state have changed divisions due to enrollment. John Glenn is going from Division 4 to Division 3, returning to D3 for the first time since 2016. Also, Bullock Creek is moving from D6 to D5, and Carleton is doing the inverse, moving from D5 to D6. Number 3, a new sheriff in town in Midland. Former Powers head coach Tyler Wellman is taking over the Chemics program after the departure of Eric Methner, who spent 16 years on the sidelines. Wellman joins one of the most fierce rivalries in the state, with Midland looking to avenge 2 losses to Dow last season, including in its playoff opener. Follow me on social media at Sam Ali Sports on Twitter and Facebook. You can also get more sports content from me on TikTok under the same name. For the 3 Point Podcast, I'm Sam Ali.
Hey guys, it's Goose from Goose Poop. Here's 3 stories I'm looking forward to this Michigan high school football season. 1, River Cities Alliance. The River Cities Alliance is a brand new conference formed from 7 schools who broke off from the OK Conference this past fall. This will be the first season of football play for the conference, and I'm really looking forward to who brings home the title. Last year's computer model would predict that Coopersville is your front runner, but don't be surprised if someone like Lowell, Sparta, Kenowa Hills, Cedar Springs, really anybody in the league could take it home. Looking forward to how this plays out, and will truly be a special season as is the conference's inaugural one. 2, the OK Red. The OK Red is always one of the state's toughest conferences. In the last few years, I've really enjoyed watching the likes of Rockford, Granville, and Caledonia battle each other out for who's number one. However, this year it's going to get even more interesting as two new state champion coaches have taken over the open positions in the conference. Josh Lucas is the new head coach at Jenison. He previously won a state title in thrilling fashion at Chelsea. Ty Spencer is the new head coach at East Kentwood. He led Detroit King to 4 state titles during his tenure. I'm really looking forward to how the addition of these guys shakes things up in the conference or doesn't. Maybe it doesn't happen this year, but it's something to keep an eye on over the next few years. 3. Brother Rice. It's not often that a coach wins a D1 state title and then changes jobs immediately the next season. But that's exactly what Aaron Marshall did when he left Southfield for Brother Rice. I'm not sure anyone would fault him either. Brother Rice is perhaps one of the state's most tradition-rich and storied programs and is in need of a rebuild coming off an 0-9 season. I'm very much looking forward to seeing how Brother Rice progresses in their first year under Marshall's leadership. It's going to make for an exciting Catholic League Central season this year.
All right, that was our Prep Pigskin preview, the 7th annual. Hard to believe. My God, I'm excited for the season. For all the people that listened all the way through, hopefully we touched on your special area of the state. I'm sure we did. We talked to 12 different experts. Everybody had good stuff to say. Just real quick, what are maybe one of your guys' favorite things you're looking forward to this year? I know for me, I can't wait to see the Mr. Football contest in the area of Detroit. We got Bryce Underwood, who's a stud for Belleville. We just heard us talking about him a little bit ago. Corey Sadler Jr., stud for Cass Tech. He's going to be all over the field. I can't wait to see those two guys in their seasons this year. What about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the obvious ones, I mean, we don't have to bury the lead. It's to see how our Corunna Cavaliers, I was about to say bounce back, not necessarily bounce back, but build on.
Continue
the run to Ford Field. I mean, that's, of course, we're all keeping our eyes on to see how Corunna does this season after that historic run. But no, one thing I want to mention, I mentioned Geoff Kimmerly in the open of this podcast. One other thing that he said, now that you've listened, you heard it, the MHSAA made a rule change that you can't have the same colored numbers on your jerseys as the color of your jersey. It can't be white on white. It has to be more contrasting. So yes, for people like you, Ted, I don't have to be listening to Z92.5 The Castle and hear you and Bart saying, I can't tell what these guys' numbers are. I can't see this. So no, that was a great move by the MHSAA.
100%. And I got to say, here in our area, I follow mostly Shiawassee County primarily, but I really expect the Owasso Trojans to make a move up. They have some good quality talent coming back. You heard Teddy talk about it from the Argus, but head coach now in his 3rd year. And he, like I said, he's got some decent players coming back. So look out for the Owasso Trojans to make a little noise this season. So it's going to be fun, boys. I mean, we can't wait. No doubt about it. So just got to say thanks. Big time thanks to all our experts. Steve Herrick for joining us, but our experts put in that little extra work. I should say a lot of extra work. It's harder than it looks, isn't it, Jared?
It is.
Yeah. It took me a while to film my segment. I'm not the pro that some of these other guys are, like Jason Hutton and some of these other names. So it took me a little bit longer than they probably took, but still, we appreciate them for all their work. It's like you said, little easier said than done.
Yes. And it's a big time commitment for them just to put it together. So we definitely want to thank them for being a part of this podcast every year. And I also want to thank Memorial Healthcare's Wellness Center, the orthopedic walk-in clinic, now open Monday through Fridays, 8 to noon. No appointment needed. More details at memorialhealthcare.org. Also want to thank our other partners, ALS of Michigan, AZ Branding Solutions, Detroit Jerky, Jacobs Insurance Agency, Corey Shook and Associates Real Estate Services, Nelson House Funeral Homes, Rivals Tap House and Grill, Success Group Mortgage and Servicing, and the Shiawassee County Fair. Again, thanks to all our experts. Our first Z92.5 Castle game of the week. It'll be the three of us, myself, Casey Smith will be the play-by-play man. Bart Matthews back at color. Hope you can tune in for that. That's Thursday, August 29th, live from the Nick in Corunna, Fowlerville at Corunna. And you can catch the replay right here at 3 Point Podcast. If you want to listen to it afterwards, we download all the games that's on the Castle right here. Peace and love, everybody. Be kind. And I'll throw this in there. Register to vote if you haven't already.
Nice.
We'll see you, everybody.